AP here, and today we're going to be continue rendering our model. So what we have currently is we have a model that renders a rectangle, as we can see here. It does its job. It renders a rectangle basically at the center of the screen, and it also has a red background. The red background is fine. We don't have to change any of that. See, set background, that's fine. The problem is, right here, we are defining 6 vertices, when in fact we should only be defining 4 vertices. The reason why we are doing this is because triangles, since they have 3 vertices each, you have to define it for each triangle, and since there's 2 times 3 is 6. However, this is not efficient enough for what we're going to be doing, because we're going to be loading models with hundreds of, even thousands of vertices, and there's going to be so many leftover vertices. See, because this simple model right here has 2 extra vertices just to define another triangle, and with hundreds it could be like this multiplied to 100. So that's very inefficient, and so we're going to be implementing indices. Now what indices does is it basically, you define the vertices that you want to, like all the vertices, and then you define the order to draw the triangles in. So let me give you an example. So we have top left, top right, bottom left. Let's put this there. Bottom left and bottom right. If we delete this and we put this, like if we do that, then it only renders 1 triangle, and that's not what we want. What we want to do is we want to define 2 triangles with just these 4 vertices. Now we can do that by taking in an int array of what we want. So let's go to the constructor and add int array of indices, and now we're going to store this in a private int array like we always do. It's going to be called indices, and this dot indices is equal to indices. But now we can change this to be just the indices.length. So indices.length, because that's how many vertices you want. You're just defining the order, and so that should be good. Now if we go down to the create, it should be just like the vertex buffer ID. So we're going to create another buffer ID called indices buffer ID, and we don't need a getter for this. And what we need to do is, after buffer data for vertex buffer ID, we're going to define indices buffer ID. So indices buffer ID is equal to gl15.gid gl.gid buffers. So now, indices. Okay, so after we do that, we are going to create a buffer for it. So what we're going to do is since it's an int array, we have to do an int buffer instead of a float buffer. So int buffer. Well, let's do it up here so we don't waste space down here. Int buffer indices buffer is equal to buffer utils dot create int buffer, and it's indices array. So I'm just gonna do indices dot length, and we're gonna import int buffer, and we gotta do indices buffer dot put the actual indices, so indices, and then we gotta flip it because remember from last tutorial, GL likes it flipped instead of normal. And so after we do that, now we have an indices buffer. We can now define it down here. So gl15.gl bind. No, my computer. No. Dot. Get out of the way fast. GL bind buffer. But instead of using GL array buffer, it's GL elements array buffer. So 15.gl elements array buffer. And then we gotta put in our indices buffer. So now we've binded the buffer. What? That's right. Indices.length indices, and we stored indices. Did we do? Int buffer. Huh? Oh, sorry. We don't do that early. We just do the ID. And so GL 15, then we do it here, buffer data target GL15.GL element array buffer. Then we do indices buffer in the year. And of course, we're going to do GL static draw because we're never going to change this ever again. So static draw. So now that we have bind it to one of these buffer IDs, we're gonna put it in the remove method. So after we finish it, we can delete it. So .gl delete buffers indices buffer ID, and we don't need a get method. So let's go to render, and we need to change a few things here. So we do not need this draw arrays anymore. But we do have, however, we need to enable some things. So gl20.gl enable vertex array 0. And we also need to disable after. So 0. And we need to go here and we need to say gl11.gl draw elements instead of draw array. So the mode is GL. Actually, hold on. Let me get the correct draw elements. GL. No, I have caps on. GL draw elements. It's the last one. So mode GL11 triangles. We need count, which is model.get vertex count. We need the type, which is GL11.gl unsigned int, and indices. I don't know what this is asking for, but it's usually put 0, so let's just keep it that way. And so now after we do this, we need to go over here and we need to add some indices for this. So we've already defined the four indices. Now we just gotta write it down. So it goes from, so we need to add a new int array and then put it down. And so it goes top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. So this is count as 0. This is 1. This is 2, and this is 3. Before I do that, I might have to, yeah. And then just sort that out. There we go. So this is the first one, and it goes from this order to this order. So we're going to draw from top left, top right to bottom left, which is 0, 1, and 2. And then we need to draw one from bottom left, bottom right, top left. So 2, 3, 1. So now that we did this, we should get the same thing. See, rectangle, but it's a lot more efficient. See, and now we can change the order around to where instead of that, you can draw to 0, and it makes a different shape. Yeah, it makes a flag or square Pac-Man. Well, it creates something else, so that's good. So now we have an easy way to, instead of doing more vertices, we can just instead do the order right here. So it makes it a lot more efficient in the long run. Anyways, that is it going to be it for the tutorial. In the next tutorial, which is probably going to be the same day as today, we're probably going to implement shaders, because with shaders you can do a ton of things, including adding textures to our model right here. So be sure to check that out, and I'll see you there. Bye.